The year was 2006, and I was playing Pokémon Stadium. Not for the first time, mind you, as for the better part of a year I had played the party games with my siblings. Clefairy Says still haunts me to this day, but this time was different. This time, I was going to tackle Stadium's story by myself. Such a thing was easier said than done, as said game was my first interaction with the Pokémon franchise. To say that I seldom knew what I was doing is putting things lightly. The only combat I had partook in was the rare times I'd managed to convince one of my kin to play the free battle mode with me. Even then, they'd quickly lose interest, and I'd be lucky if I got 2 or 3 rounds in. The mere zygote that I was, I refused to let a fundamental lack of gaming comprehension deter me from pushing onward. And so, I blindly and naively leapt into the fray, and was swiftly humbled. This schooling via trial and error was brutal, as Hop wasn't around to teach me type advantages. I knew fire beat grass beat water beat fire, but what do you mean this buff hexapod can't karate chop a fart cloud? Adding to the mayhem were all the awesome and fun quirks found in Gen 1 combat specifically. You know, the fair and balanced and not at all incredibly broken. Gradually, I attained a better grasp of the mechanics before me. I still refused to use moves that did no damage, but I at least knew when to switch out. I sliced through Stadium mode, and then took on the harrowing castle. I beat the first gym leader, and then the second, and then the next 6. All along the way, I was hyped up by the greatest announcer of my childhood.
Oh! It's down! Take it down on the word go! Why? Take it down with 1 hit!
With unrelenting tenacity, I made it to the Elite Four, and my mouth was agape. I told my brother, and in another memory that I still remember distinctly, he looked at the screen and simply said, "You're gonna lose." He was not wrong. Side note, but imagine my sheer disappointment years later upon playing a proper Kanto game and seeing that the Pokemon League didn't have an epic castle but some lame venue instead. Anyway, this final slog was gnarly, but I made it out the other side, only to face a primary color. This ordeal too gave me some grief, but by the skin of my teeth, I won. Whew. I guess that's it. I suppose I'm done with Stadium. I may as well switch out the game and take a swing at Gauntlet while I'm at it. Let me just back out real quick. What? This was Mewtwo, and I was not ready for the ensuing beating. Now, if I were to ask you what your first introduction to this psychic feline was, then chances are you'd say it was via either the mainline Kanto games or the first Pokemon movie. And while I will get to those examples later, you need to understand how staggering this sequence of events were to childhood me. To go from Sushi Go Round to this abomination in the sky utterly floored me. The lack of the aforementioned announcer heightened the tension, to say nothing of the brutal evisceration that befell any team I threw at this thing. However, in a rare instance of my 2 brain cells actually collaborating, Kid Me realized that the only way I was going to win here was with a Pokemon faster than Mewtwo. Well then, who out of all these could possibly outspeed our telepathic cat here? Ah, that's who. In the sole instance of me ever using a non-attacking move during my childhood, a Thunder Wave-wielding Electrode is what I used to hamper this beastie. From then on, it was delightfully easy to whittle down its HP, and the second ever final boss of my gaming career was defeated. I was truly ecstatic, but my jubilation was short-lived upon learning that, no, you don't get to use Mewtwo after this actually. Guess what, kid? You have to play through the entire game again on a higher difficulty just to unlock it. Needless to say, I did not do this, and with my acquisition later that summer of the S-tier hand-me-down that was Pokemon Sapphire, I had little desire to. Still, Mewtwo had made quite the impression, and while Stadium may have introduced me to this genetic monstrosity, it was my viewing of Pokemon the first movie later that year that really solidified this otherworldly Gato into my psyche. Pop quiz for those of you who have watched this. What is the opening scene? If you said said that it starts with Mewtwo destroying the lab, boy, do I have some news for you. The version that I watched was specifically the uncut story of Mewtwo's origin. Just what is the uncut story of Mewtwo's origin, you ask? Pure, unadulterated trauma. No, I'm not talking about the rather mundane segment of finding Mew's eyelash, but everything involving child Mewtwo. You know, the part where you learn that Dr. Fuji is working with Team Rocket because he's grief-stricken that his daughter, Amber, perished in an accident. How he was able to clone her with the caveat that he assisted in creating Mewtwo. How Mewtwo befriended this Amber 2 and a trio of cloned starters. Oh yeah, and how they all fade away into nothingness, leaving Mewtwo the sole survivor of this experiment. Oh my god. I would just like to mention that the version I recently watched to jog my memory for this video does not have this opening, and the rest of the movie is worse off as a result. This part adds vital emotional context as to why Mewtwo is the way he is, and I'm astounded that Western audiences didn't get to see it until the DVD release. There's even a moment later in the movie where Mewtwo is like, oh, the evolved versions of Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle. These are quite different from the ones I remember, and if you didn't see the uncut version, then you'd have no damn idea what he was talking about. But I digress. Seeing Mewtwo wake up, realize he's a science project, and then obliterating the lab was wild. And Dr. Fuji, right before he got atomized, saying, "We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokemon, and we succeeded," has been seared into my memory ever since. Giovanni then showing up and not batting an eye at the fact that Team Rocket's R&D wing just got evaporated had me thinking this man was an Ice-type gym leader with how cold he was here. Look, I'm not going to do a play-by-play of the movie. If somehow you haven't seen it, then I highly recommend you give it a watch. The climax especially is timeless, and next to Lucario and the Mystery of Mew, it's my favorite Pokemon movie. All of this to say that when I finally played Fire Red years later and encountered Mewtwo in that there cerulean cave, well, I had a level of reverence for it that was simply incomparable to other legendaries. Like, I love Rayquaza and Giratina, obviously, but my first introduction to either of them was just a random encounter in a post-game location. Now, to be fair, if you remove my prior experiences with said creature, then yes, Mewtwo is also a random encounter in a post-game location. But to its credit, there is some build-up lore at least foreshadowing its eventual appearance. Assuming you bothered to pick through the dilapidated mansion on Cinnabar Island, you can find a slew of journal entries detailing the creation of Mewtwo. From there, we learn that Mew was found in the distant, fictitious land of Guyana, and that Mewtwo's birthday is February 6th. Do with this information as you wish. Anyway, I used my Master Ball on Mewtwo, not just because it was a guaranteed catch, but because said capsule has a giant M on it, and that's rather fitting, I'd say. This particular Mewtwo was the first Pokemon I had ever gotten to level 100, and while a plethora of legendaries soon took the spotlight, I never forgot just how monumental this Mystifying Mouser was. Thankfully, neither did Game Freak. Gen 5 gave it a signature move in Psystrike, and Gen 6 was practically its renaissance. Mewtwo finally received its own theme, and not one, but two Mega Evolutions. Out of the two, I definitely like Mega Mewtwo X more. The fact that this psychic being just says, "Screw telepathy, catch these hands," is genuinely peak. Mega Mewtwo Y isn't terrible, but the tail, now protruding from the back of the skull, is a tad bit disturbing. Speaking of disturbing, it was around this time that I read the manga, and oh, that's straight up saying that Mewtwo has some human DNA in its genetic code. Yeah, this thing's a hybrid. The moral implications of capturing it are a bit dubious now that I have this knowledge. Regardless, it engaging in combat with a comically large spoon is something that I wish the main series games had. Not that Mewtwo has been particularly neglected as of late. Giovanni having a Mega Mewtwo in the Ultra games jump-scared me, and it having some mild relevancy as recently as Legends ZA is a pleasant surprise. Also, Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution was frankly uncanny if I'm being honest. Good lord. At any rate, Mewtwo stands as one of my favorite legendaries. It's got some wicked lore, a design that reminds me of another franchise I love, and some scary stats. Seriously, this thing necessitated the creation of an entire new competitive tier before it was cool. With Generation 10 on the horizon, who knows, maybe Mewtwo will get some crazy new form. It's been ages, and I'm still waiting for Mew 3. That is all I have for you today. Thank you for your time. Okay, can we just talk about the absolute travesty that is Armored Mewtwo in the modern day? This looks like someone's edgy Sonic OC. Please, Game Freak, bring back the sleek 90s design. I beg of you.